Hello, I'm Dr. Bartholomew Chatter. And welcome to a new installment of Stupid Things That Humans Say. Tonight's show actually deals with two similar quotes and the problems that are inherent in their wording. My new Jumbomatic Arcutron computer will finally get to be put to use for its time-saving capabilities. Because science is cooler when it is expensive and flashy. Now the fact that I have to explain this one's inaccuracies is the same reason why I rant against apologeticism. It literally starts out by telling people not to question. But let me point out that questioning is the path to real answers. If one stops questioning, then one stops thinking and enters into the realm of faith. And faith is not dependent on actual truth but rather on what people want to believe. This is why the believers like this saying, and people that know the facts shake their head. Questioning led us to discover microbes and antibiotics. And stems from the study of cloth fibers by Anthony van Leeuwenhoek, who lived in Holland between 1632 and 1723. Anthony used a small glass bead and small metal clamp to inspect the fibers of his cloth. Using this crude microscope he saw the first bacteria glimpsed by man, and he even drew what he saw. He was an excellent artist. In fact, his microscope became somewhat of a party favor in its time, kind of like Tupperware in the 50s. But what about volunteers? What could be wrong with them? People that volunteer are altruistic, sure, but some could be downright nearsighted. The first wave of people to start the Crusades were volunteers. Some did it because the church said their sins would be forgiven. Some did it because they believed it was the right thing to do as a Christian, others believed the propaganda. But doing it for the forgiveness of sin seems greedy, and goes against actual forgiveness because it is a condition that must be met, like blackmail. Not to mention it seems to go against love thy enemy and turn the other cheek. Ironically, it doesn't go against the golden rule because it agrees with eye for an eye. So I'm still wondering how people could say it's a Christian thing to do when their book tells them two distinctly contrary things. And the church's propaganda was based in telling people that Christians were being persecuted and killed in Jerusalem. However, the Christians lived in their own walled-up section of the city and were not the targets of attacks. Nor were Christian missionaries or pilgrims. So the propaganda from the church was a lie. But the volunteers believed it. And that first wave of peasant volunteers ended up killing over 800 people, over a pair of shoes, before they even left Europe. Because no provisions were provided by the church. So sadly to say, yes, I am going to question the value of volunteers, as well as the motives and means of the people, or deities, that recruit them. The road to hell is paved in good intentions. So what about Noah? Wasn't he good? The Bible says he found grace with God. But before and after it says all men and flesh was wicked and corrupt. So, let's say he is the only good man. This means God didn't kill the 3 sons for being wicked. So let's revise to say them, and the wives, were all good. Do I really need to point out that it's a moot point because his goodness did not make him a volunteer? In fact, he was commanded by God to build the ark, like a slave. Not only that, Noah was the only one doing the work. It never says his sons or any of the wives helped. Which excludes them from being volunteers as well. I'm still waiting to hear the people that repeat this quote actually make a logical and factually accurate statement. Okay, well, maybe your microphones are turned off. Or my speakers are on the fritz again. So let's move on to the Titanic. How dare you theists make fun of a horrible tragedy where over 1,000 people died? That's my job, you freaking idiots. How could you be so uncaring as to not consider my ego? This gets the cockles of my heart boiling, and trust me, you don't want your cockles boiled. But let's tackle this portion of the quote so as not to leave any loose ends. The ark was built by one man with the help of God to make it possible. Thus Noah was aided by magic. The builders of the Titanic were a team of mortals and had no magical help, so the premise of this sentence claiming the ark was only built by volunteers is pathetically misinformed. Plus it does not take into account the Titanic's construction. The steel itself was created poorly and was filled with imperfection, thus it was far more brittle than it should have been. We know this from actually taking samples from the wreck of the Titanic. However, no one has ever found the ark, despite saying they know the exact mountain it's supposedly on. In fact, the passage typically makes the word plural saying, the mountains of Ararat. It does not say it is specifically on the mountain. Also, searches for the ark have been done since Eusebius, who lived at the end of the 3rd into the beginning of the 4th century of the Common Era. AD. If you're theist, these venture even to the year 2010, when a Chinese-Turkish team of biblical archaeologists said they actually got inside Noah's Ark. However, their C-14 tests were dubious, because their results they did release showed only one lab saying it was from the time apologists claim was the biblical flood. The other 2 labs only said between 100 and 600 years before the present, which couldn't be close to the biblical flood and leaves a gap of discrepancy, even between each other. Plus the team of researchers aren't releasing the full results of the testing, rather, they are using the info they already released to acquire more donations and preach the gospel. This smells of con artists at work. Among other noteworthy people to visit or write of Mount Ararat were Marco Polo, and Sir Walter Raleigh. And Walter even commented on the term, mountains of Ararat, actually meant the whole of the Asiatic mountain ranges and runs through more than just the country of Turkey. In 1876 James Bryce said he found hand-carved lumber on top of the mountain. It was his belief that it was from the ark, but that doesn't make it the truth. It could be a tall tale. We'll probably never know because the location of that piece of lumber is unknown. So we can't test the age of the wood. Even so, dating would be very hard to do, because the wood has been exposed to water for a very long period of time, which can throw off the accuracy of C-14 tests. Also, a different claimant by the name of Ron Wyatt, in the 80s and 90s, was also refuted because he said a small oddly shaped pair of ridge lines were a boat. However, geologists recognize this as a natural formation. It does not fit ancient boat-making criteria or the dimensions in the Bible. And the Seventh-day Adventists, who paid for many of Ron's archaeological hunts, have even come forward refuting many of the claims they used to support because of more accurate data. But we did find the Titanic, and know exactly where its 2 halves lie, on the bottom of the ocean, in pitch darkness. So you see there is a big difference. Plus, using God's help to prove that divine power is better than man's skill and ingenuity is not only insulting to man, but it misses the main point. If God used magic every step of the way to help Noah, including keeping icebergs out of the way, then why didn't he just give all the wicked people a quicker, less terrifying, and painless death? No, instead he uses magic to help an idiot man build a boat, gather tens of thousands of animals to cram in a box they made that was too small, feed all of them and the animals, plus keep all the plants alive while underwater, keep all the fish from dying due to changing water pressure, change in the water's salinity, and the change in temperature, while also allowing birds to fly over water for 150 days, of which 40 of those days were spent flying in the rain, which had to be done at all hours of the day and night. Do I really need to point out that it takes less than an hour to drown? Why did God have to do it for 150 days? That's just plain sadistic. But the story has a happy ending because Noah became a belligerent drunk after the flood, thus proving that he was just like many modern captains, whose ships often stay afloat far longer than Noah's did, and are far bigger than the Ark or the Titanic. So, Who came up with the perversion of truth to make this quote by twisting of facts? Well, it was pretty smart of them to not lay claim to such an idiotic piece of drivel. But wait, there's more. I told you there would be 2 quotes tonight. So here's the next one. You silly humans. Maybe logic isn't your game. Have you tried Candyland? What about 52 card pickup? The second sentence I feel I have already covered, but let's revisit it first. Noah had the help of God to make the success possible, so Noah can't take any real credit. The math literally doesn't work. Had God not helped Noah to succeed, the entire boat would have been filled with rotting animals and dead theists. Now the first sentence is also pretty dumb. I have never eaten living octopus before, and I am not scared to say that doing so frightens the heck out of me. Doing so has killed a number of people because living octopi usually try to prevent other animals from swallowing them. Imagine all the suckers and tentacles in your throat. Imagine it trying to climb back out. Yes. It freaking flips me out. I've also never jumped off a bridge before, but I think I'll pass on that too, because it is very dangerous. Plus, I don't trust railings. They are just something that flips you over when you fall off a tall structure, which further complicates your ability to react. Plus, if you are a theist, then this also says you shouldn't be afraid to try sodomy. Personally, I wouldn't recommend trying it. But I also wouldn't say you should fear it. It's just not my cup of tea, as it were. But try using this quote to get out of going to hell, if you ever try sodomy and God actually manifests in front of you. If you can, videotape it and post it in the comments below. And the last line I've also explained. Because pointing out a tragic mistake does not make it right to spread misinformation through dogmatic inaccuracy. So who wrote this quote? Well, there's your problem. People usually don't take comedians seriously.